Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Frame Mile Live. My name is Sean McDaniel, and Frame Mile Live is the show where creativity meets technology. So where we talk to guests, either producers, directors, editors, or anyone in the creative industry, and we share their creative process and workflows with you in this live environment. Now, we've got a lot of people in the queue already, and I love to open up the show with where is everyone chiming in from. We are broadcasting from Hollywood, California on a nice, beautiful, sunny day, and I hope that it's beautiful and sunny wherever you're at. So throw in the chat where you're coming in from. We've got a lot of folks in the queue. I'm really excited about this show because it's with one of my favorite brands, Princess Cruises. I took a cruise with them about a year or so ago, and I had such a great time. So I'm really excited to talk about these folks because it's just they do incredible work behind the scenes, and I'm super excited to talk with them. We're starting to get some comments coming in. I love it. We've got some Toronto, Canada. Scott's already in the chat asking there's some Colorado peeps. Let's see if there's Colorado folks in the audience here. We got a Paris, France. Welcome all the way on the other side. Thanks for chiming in so late in the day. Minneapolis. We've got Denver, Colorado. I love it. Wet and cold in the UK. I'm sorry about that, but I'm glad it's you're feeling good and you're joining us. We've got another Los Angeles. We've got Tampa Bay, Florida. We've got Sacramento. Let's go, Scott. And Battle Creek, Michigan. Well, I love all of these people coming in. We got Canada coming in. I love seeing where everyone's coming in from because it's really nice to have one collective environment. We're going to have these wonderful conversations and talk about creative workflows and just talk about creative work. So yeah, and let me know too, what would be a dream cruise destination for you? Let's throw that out there too, just to get some more engagement here going on. Green Bay, Appleton, Wisconsin. And we got a little wave there. Hello. Nigeria. Wow. Hello. Welcome. This is wonderful. And also, too, we've got JJ Powell in the comment section. He's furiously typing away. So if you have any questions, you may see him chime in as well. Make sure you say hello to JJ. But yeah, here we go. Dream Cruises. We got an Alaska from Scott. Scott, we know you love Alaska. I love it too. Sophie is excited for Alaska. We've got one for Antarctica. That would be a cool one. Okay, so there's a cold plunge thing they do, I think, down in Antarctica, where you can actually jump in the freezing cold water. I love it because it's like a cold plunge, but I don't know, Antarctica water, like that's like serious. That's like a whole nother level of cold. But let me know if you would do it. Throw that in the comments. Let's see if you'd be down to do it. But I do see a lot of Alaskas. So this is actually a perfect way to segue into our conversation today. So I do want to point out that a lot of you have already put in where you're from. Keep those comments coming in and be very engaging in this because we are going to be able to answer questions as we go along, but I am going to answer questions at the end as well and give us a little time for some Q&A. But throw in those questions if you have them as they come along. I do occasionally check the chat, so I love hearing from our audience. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So Frame.io version 4 Pro Beta was announced earlier this year. And if you all jumped onto that beta, give a little what's up, give a little hallelujah, whatever you want to say. But we did release that earlier this year. And our beta testers have been putting Frame.io to full use and showing us all the amazing things that they've been able to accomplish with this amazing new update for Frame.io. But last week at Adobe Max, and let me know if you all watched, but we're finally able to announce the GA version of Frame.io version 4 to all of our individual plans. And I would love to take a few minutes and show you a quick tour of Frame.io version 4. Let's go into a quick demo. All right, so I've got Frame.io version 4 pulled up. And one of the new things that, if you're not familiar with Frame.io, but it's a place for you to have all of your creative deliverables and your assets in one place. So what's really changed here is the environment that you're working in. So Frame.io was built completely from the ground up. It's a completely new version, but a lot of the same features that you love and cherish are all still there. We have not taken those away. So right now what we're looking at is something called a workspace. And a workspace is where all of your projects are going to live. I've got 3 projects here that already exist, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to create a new project. So I can start one from blank. Let's just call this new project. And I can just kind of start fresh if I want to. But what's really nice about FrameIO version 4 is that it accepts all different file types. So not only are you able to do your videos and your photos, but you can also do your graphical files, your PDF documents, your Microsoft Word, your Excel, all of your project files for all of your Adobe tools, whatever you want are all available inside of Frame. So you can just upload those very easily. So I'll choose one that's kind of off the cuff here. I'll choose a project template based on an asset library, which means we're going to have a lot of graphical assets in there. So I'm going to create a new project, and let's go into that project and show you what this looks like. So in here, we've got a folder tree on the top left-hand corner. This folder tree is very familiar with all of our different computers, so it's an easy way to adopt yourself to version 4. And as I click on a folder, whatever assets are inside of those will appear on the right-hand side. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the root folder here. I'm going to go under my appearance menu, and I'm going to go ahead and choose to flatten those folders. So now I can actually see all of my assets in one place. Now, if I click on an asset, my viewer is actually available for me. So this is actually a multi-page PDF. So I can go in here. I can change which page I'm looking at. So let's say I'm looking at page. Let's get some more color here. Page 25, I've got a lot of assets in there. But if I want to go in and actually make some comments, I can do that right on my screen because we have a new feature called the panels feature. And this allows us to toggle on and off what we want to see or don't see. So before, you used to have to click into an asset in order to see it, but you don't have to do that anymore. You're now able to see everything on one screen. Now I'm going to jump back into kind of one of these other projects here. So I want to show you something kind of cool that we've already got set up. So I'm going to click on this asset here. Let's open up these panels. And I want to go and leave a comment, but I'm not just going to leave any comment. One of our newer features is the ability to do anchored comments. So I'm going to go ahead and play. And I'm going to go ahead and just actually turn on my anchor tool here at the bottom. I'm going to click on this screen. And now I could say, this is a little dark. Now I've actually created a comment that will live over here on the right-hand side, but now I've got an anchor point of where that's going to live. But here's something that's really cool too. If I leave another comment here, let's say I want to drop in a comment there, I can now actually leave an attachment on that comment. So right here, if I just hover my mouse over my little paperclip, I can actually see that I can attach a file, which is really, really cool and very handy. Let's say you're doing a screen replacement on like an iPhone or on a TV screen. You can actually pinpoint exactly what file that's going to be. Really great feature. I love that new commenting feature. But now we're actually back into our assets panel, and I can see all of my assets in here, but we've got a lot more items added to each of these assets. What we have now is the ability to edit and view different metadata tags. So if I actually click on my fields tab, I've got a whole list of pre-made metadata tags that were created by FrameIO. But you know what? We don't always want to be organized by the way FrameIO wants us to organize it. We might want to organize things on our own. So now we have something called a custom metadata field. So now I can go in and go, let's say approvers. I can choose a single select. Let's just go maybe client name. Let's go client 1, maybe client 2, and let's say client 3. This is just here as an example. So now if I add those users, now I can actually just multi-select some assets here. Let's say client 1, and then let's say this is client 2, and let's say this is client 3. So now I made my tags. This is great. Now I can quickly filter and sort by any of those tags that I want to. But here's something that I really want to show you is the power of FrameIO can create something called a collection. And that's what this little box is down here. So if I actually want to categorize my different assets into different sections, I can do that. So I'm going to create a new collection, and I'm going to call this approvals. Approvals. I can't spell today. Let's just choose one of these emoji, maybe a little smiley, little cheeky face. And we'll choose all assets. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on that field that I just created. I think it was called approvers. Apparently I've done this before. And I'm going to choose group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these approvers into the different sections. So now I've grouped them by approvers. So now I've got client 1, client 2, client 3, and everything is nice and organized. So now you can see where you can apply this to anything. Let's say you're on a film shoot and you want to organize things by shoot day. You can do that. Let's say you're on a different photo shoot, or you have different brand deliverables. Let's say you've got assets that need to go to Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, wherever they need to go. Facebook. Holy moly. But wherever they need to go, you can easily divide them up using collections. It's basically a dynamic bucket. So if you change any of the assets that are inside of your library, let's say, for instance, down here, if I want to change one of these to client 2, it automatically and dynamically updates as I go along without affecting the folder tree that I have up here. So collections are a really, really great way to see and organize your assets with metadata. And the last thing I want to show you all is the ability to customize your shares. So no longer is the review and presentation link option. You have one link to share out that is completely customizable. You can see here, I've got a header added on top. I can add in my logo here. I've got the option to change my appearance. I can do it kind of dark. And then I've also got my same settings as I had before with the ability to turn on and off commenting, downloads, and so on. So these are great. They're customizable. You can really brand them to your brand. And what's nice is that, let's say you want to have one that's specifically for images and one that's maybe specific for brand assets. The nice thing is the world is your burrito, and you can make it however way you'd like to. I use that term a lot. The world is your burrito. But who doesn't like a burrito? I like burritos. So, but yeah, so that is a quick look at version 4. If any questions that you have, please pop those in. But if you have any more questions on that, visit our website, frame.io. But let's jump into the next thing, because I actually want to show a couple other little things here. So I'm going to close out my screen. Beautiful. Now, it's one thing to actually show you how a product works, but it's another to have a customer show us how it works. And Princess Cruises was an early V4 adopter, and they used it on a recent trip to Alaska to capture the beauty for future travelers on a Princess cruise to this great state. Now, I may be biased because I absolutely loved my trip to Alaska on a Princess ship. I know I mentioned that earlier, but it was maybe about a year and a half ago. I had an amazing time. It was probably one of the best trips I've ever been on. Again, I might be being biased here, but I absolutely loved it. The landscape was absolutely breathtaking. And of course, I was visiting as a guest to the wild landscape of the Alaskan terrain, but trying to capture stunning imagery is a whole other journey. And these filmmakers that we're going to talk to today had to take and capture this majestic wild wilderness on the go as they were flying around the different areas of Alaska. Now, we have 2 key members of the Princess team to talk to and how they were able to capture such stunning images in this environment, but also how they used Frame.io, version 4, and Adobe tools to pull this off. Now, before we start, I do want to show a case study of this team in action, navigating the Alaskan climate to bring these dazzling images to Princess passengers. This case study was made by our very own Frame.io and Adobe Prod Squad here at Frame.io. Let's take a look at the case study now.
And cut. Let's move on.
Moving locations. Let's motivate all gear. We leave this place cleaner than we found it.
For Princess, Alaska is the #1 revenue generator as far as a destination experience. It's very important to make sure that we market that product very well. I can already see it from here. We need to be up there. We have a track record of going into very remote environments with very small teams and delivering high return on investment. That's why we get those calls.
Cut, it's a beautiful take.
I aspire to be a world-class teammate, and my journey with Frame.io has run in parallel with that. My name is Scott Martin. I'm the Senior Manager of Media Production for Princess Cruises.
Roll cameras. Action.
Most people hear Princess and they think of cruise ships and oceans. A lot of people aren't even aware that you can go on a cruise tour in the interior of Alaska. Our job was to go and tell a story in Alaska that's never been told by a cruise line before.
Back to 1. Let's keep that same energy.
There was a long list of deliverables. Brand photography, new brand video, commercial campaign, product series, and then we also had a web series.
This was one of the biggest shoots in Princess history in Alaska.
We planned meticulously.
We've really had to have a much tighter workflow than normal.
And that's where Frame.io comes in.
Scott will always select his takes while they're out shooting.
And action.
Watching dailies in Frame.io and me commenting and all of that communication going out to our editors immediately was life-changing for our collaboration velocity.
Open up the camera a little bit, Zay. Nice work.
We had 14 days of shooting and we had one shot that was incredibly important, and that was Mount Denali. The most challenging thing about Denali is she's only visible 30% of the time. So planning for that shot was quite difficult. We had to fly over it, camp on the other side, and then be up at sunrise and be ready for sunset, which are all happening within a 3 or 4 hour period in Alaska. It's just a logistical nightmare. The first time that I saw Denali at mile 62, my jaw literally hit the floor.
All 4 in frame, please.
That moment is something that I always wanted to document.
With Denali in the background.
And she delivered for us, because Alaska always does.
Action!
When it all lined up, it was just such a sense of relief.
Cut.
Scott got back from Camp Denali and immediately got an email.
I know Kristen is on site. What are the odds of having the AK Select Reel ready by 7/26?
It was day 13 of a 14-day shoot, and the Princess executives were having a meeting, and they wanted a B-roll selects reel basically within 36 hours after the shoot. So I reacted like any veteran director would, with panic.
What I need to do here is I need to go into frame and then make a lot more comments. So I think the speed is critical here.
But then immediately, that panic did start to subside with the amount of preparation that we had put into Frame.io.
If you look at any camera roll from Scott, it's like select, 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 select. But I love it because then I can actually import his comments into my Premiere project. So I already had a glimpse into his brain.
With Frame.io, we were able to communicate at speeds that we have never been able to communicate at.
So we were able to turn that edit around within 24 hours after wrapping.
So this is a direct quote from stakeholders after watching the video. The reaction was many hearts, some tears, and wow. We've created a record volume of work at an extremely high level and have provided previews at record speed.
Scott is a really wonderful collaborator. He is one of the most driven directors that I know. You can tell, not only just based on the footage itself, but the Frame.io notifications that I get the next morning when I'm like, what were you doing at 4 o'clock in the morning?
15, 20 years ago, this is almost impossible because of technology. But how technology has changed. Frame.io is something that I'm falling asleep with every night. And even that builds more confidence in me.
Action! Wonderful. This is it.
It really is that central watering hole where we can all come together and make sure that we're delivering world-class products.
So first shot, makeup and hair matters. Second shot, no fly-ins, don't worry about it.
By having a great team, wonderful collaboration, awesome tools, you feel like you can kind of take on anything.
Right towards me. I want you crossing camera as close as possible, right this side.
That's what Adobe tools do. They inspire folks to take bigger swings.
Beautiful.
Okay, cut.
All right. That's amazing. Every time I watch that video, I get goosebumps, and I can't tell you enough how great that that video came out. So great job, Prod Squad. But let's go ahead and introduce you to our guests today. They are, drum roll, Scott Martin, who is head of production at Princess, and Kristen Rogers, who's the editor at Princess. Again, please leave your questions in the chat. We're going to be chatting with them for the next few minutes. And then we want to take your questions as well. So please throw those in the chat. Yes. Wow. That was so epic. Juliana. Yeah, I agree. So let's go ahead and start our discussion. Thank you two for joining us today. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Sean.
Of course. So I want to hear, I mean, I know the audience wants to hear, but I want to hear about your amazing careers and how you're able to capture all this amazing content. So I would love to have both of you introduce yourselves to the audience. So exactly what you do for Princess and a little background about yourselves.
Take it away, Kristen.
I was going to say, you go first.
No, you take it away.
My name is Kristen Rogers. I'm an editor. I have been editing for, gosh, I don't even know. It's been like 25 years, which sounds crazy, but I started when I was 13. And yeah, I started working with Princess 6 years ago. And then I also, I love cutting. I do a lot of documentaries in terms of like with Princess. So like the Pursuit series is all documentary style. And then that's my favorite style to cut, but I also do narrative stuff. And yeah, I just love creating. So
Amazing. Scott?
Yeah, so my name's Scott David Martin. My parents thought it would be a good idea to give me 3 first names, so I guess I'm owning that. Today, you know, my dream is being a world-class collaborator, right? And that dream is kind of running in parallel with Frame.io. I'm an executive producer and director, and I also am the senior manager over at Princess Cruises running their production shop. So extremely blessed and extremely grateful to be a creative, and also extremely grateful to be a creative in the travel space.
Love it. So the first question I'm going to throw out, let's just start getting into it. What do you think is important with the director and editor relationship?
Kristen, I think
that's like, yeah, it's hard. I think communication is the most important thing. It's just very important. Being able from pre-production to production to post-production. So we actually use Frame in all 3 of those. Mm-hmm. And it's very important. So
as an editor though, how do you like getting feedback? You know, like, are there specific kind of notes? Do you like to kind of go into a hole and just kind of work and then present it back? Or do you like to collaborate as you go along?
Yeah. I like both. I mean, it depends on the time constraint. So sometimes we get really quick turnaround projects. And so it's amazing to be able to work with Scott, like on a live call, but Frame.io is like, I'm not just trying to like, oh, Frame.io, because we're doing this for Frame.io. It really has been a huge tool. And like, it's very much helped us, especially in Alaska, which I'm sure we'll get into. But being able to have his live feedback in comments, I don't know how many people that are on here or viewing this that used to work in the space of like getting emails with like loads of comments and having to copy and paste into documents. That's how I used to work. And so it's just really quickened up the communication. And so Scott as a director, it's like, a lot of times when he can leave comments in what he loves, like in different shots and stuff like that, I get notifications and then I can view them, bring them into my timeline. And I can basically literally see into his brain. I know I said that in the thing, but I can literally see into his brain without having to actually talk to him. But then if we have a faster turnaround, then we can jump on calls and meet up and screen share. So.
Yeah, I think I'd like to jump on that too, right? Because communication is central to the relationship that Kristen and I have, right? It's paramount, and it's why Frame.io is helping us so much. And I think on top of that, you know, when we think about the editor and director relationship, I think one thing that needs to be noted is that I, myself as a director, have a tremendous amount of admiration, trust, and respect for Kristen as an editor, right? And I'm 100% committed to like respecting her vision. And I think that's why our relationship has this kind of hockey stick level growth, right? Yeah. Because I really hired Kristen for her instincts and her taste, right? And I try to lean into that as much as possible. And Frame.io gives us the ability to collaborate at speeds that we never thought were possible. So I think, you know, the director and editor relationship needs to have a foundation. And then once you have Frame.io, a tool that can help elevate that foundation, I think it's pretty special.
Absolutely.
So I always like to ask, I mean, how do you commit to an idea or fight for a creative decision if the other is maybe not responding or not seeing that vision? How do you overcome those obstacles? Obviously, you guys work really well together, but you know, there's going to be times where you're not always going to agree. So what's kind of a common practice you use to get through that?
Yeah, Kristen, you want me to take this one first?
You can go that, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sean, I don't think we fight for ideas, right? I think we explore them, right? Yeah. It's because you have that foundation of trust. And keep me honest here, Kristen, something I say a lot is, let's explore this, right? Mm-hmm. And honestly, if Kristen isn't seeing the vision, Sean, I take accountability for that as a director, right? That's on me, not on her as an editor, right? So if she is not seeing it, that's almost like a challenge for myself as a director to get better. And, we're going to disagree at times, right? But is she willing to explore? Always, right? And am I wrong sometimes? More often than I like to admit, right? So I think that the best way to elevate any editor's work and yourself as a director is have that respect and trust, and then maybe play patient as a director and let the editor play doctor, right? I try not to say to Kristen, hey, my elbow hurts, give me the elbow pill, right? I'll let the doctor or editor diagnose that problem and say, hey, my elbow hurts, but I don't provide the diagnosis and prescription. I'll let her, the expert, diagnose that. And oftentimes, Sean, she might say to me, hey, your shoulder's the problem. Let's fix that and your elbow's going to feel better. So I think that's why we have such a strong relationship, is it truly is collaborative. It's not so hierarchical where it's director, editor. And I think that's where a lot of directors might miss, right? Is believing and leaning into that hierarchy instead of leaning into the collaboration aspect of it.
Yeah. I also love, I love everything that you just said. That was perfectly said. And then also with like working as a team and working as collaborators, I always like to explore whatever anybody brings to me. So if somebody has an idea and they're like, I want to see this, I would never say no. Like, even if I don't think it's going to work, I want to show them why it may or may not work. And sometimes what I think won't work actually does work. So I would never just like shoot somebody down. A lot of times what I'll also do is I'll create alt versions. So it's like, okay, yeah, we can totally do what you want to do, but let's also create an alt version with this and just see which one plays better and test both. But it's all about the collaboration. So
yeah, I love that. The A/B testing, I think, is something that happens a lot. And again, that's something that Frame.io makes super easy now, right? It used to be like, hey, send 2 links and watch them side by side on different computers. And now to a stakeholder, to a client, to a DP, to a director, to a producer, to an editor, that content velocity or that collaboration velocity is so fast because you're able to see it. And we're such visual people. We're all visual people in this medium. The easier it is for us to see things, the better decisions we're going to make, right? Something I'm always saying is I'm searching for better ways of seeing, right? And Frame.io helps us see better. It's wild.
So I do want to take a step back, though. How did you both get involved with Princess Cruises? How did this kind of start for each one of you?
do you want to go first or want me to?
Go ahead, Kristen. Take it away.
Scott found me and I am so grateful for it. We had put a video out. So we do a lot of documentary style stuff. My husband's also a filmmaker, and we had put a documentary out on Vimeo called Glacier Exit, and Scott saw it. And then Jesse, who's one of our amazing producers, Scott showed it to him and they're like, we got to find that editor. I guess this is what I've been told happened. Who knows? Maybe they were like, yeah, she's okay. But they found me and then brought me in, and I've been with them ever since, which is like 2018, I think. So, and I love my job with them. So very grateful.
That story is 100% factual, right? It's finding your future collaborators on the internet, right? You know, I'm always constantly searching for that next collaborator, right? And I think Kristen was one of those situations where we found great work online, like we all do, right? You see something, you're inspired by it, you're motivated by it. Well, that's your impetus to go work with that person, right? Mm-hmm. And that's literally what we did with Kristen. Is we found great work, and then once we started working with her, it was like a 10 out of 10, because not only was she talented, but she was kind and she was a great collaborator. And that's really the type of people that we're trying to surround ourselves with, right? Is not just world-class talent, but world-class collaborators. And Kristen ticks both of those boxes.
I love it. It's very sweet. So what do you create this content for? I assume it's for the travelers that are heading to Alaska, and you know, obviously want to capture the beauty of the Alaskan landscape. But where does this actually live when you're done with that? And why is it very centered on Alaska?
Yeah, I can take that one, Kristen. So the travel biz really trades on 3 things, Sean. It's word of mouth, right? It's the relationships with travel partners. And then number 3, captivating storytelling, right? And that's where we all come in. We're all on this call right now, or hopefully, because we want to be captivating to storytellers, right? Totally. So the reason for Alaska is truly because the Princess situation was, they've always been number 1 in Alaska for decades. but the content really lagged the market position. So it was our job to go there and really tell a story that's never been told because they are number one in Alaska.
Interesting. Yeah, I find that fascinating because like sometimes you'll turn on the TV or you'll watch something and it's this beautiful shot, but it's just, something that's just kind of on the television, but you don't realize that there's a team that has to go out there and capture that at that right moment. And that's a lot of what the case study kind of covered is, waking up early, getting to that moment at the right spot, because you only have a matter of moments to capture that before it's completely covered in clouds or, you're not able to get it anymore. Now I feel like both of you are filmmakers at heart. So did you ever think that your filmmaking journeys would bring you to a large corporation like Princess?
I've got something for this, but Kristen, you take it. I want to hear your answer to this.
I mean, I've worked with corporations. So I've always worked in like commercials and with corporations, basically since I got out of film school doing editing. But then I always do like my indie filmmaking on the side. But then, yeah, I love travel. So like before when I would work on commercials, it would be for like Budweiser or Coors Light, like whatever, like, different stuff that I wasn't necessarily always like, woohoo. But with travel, like Scott literally found my work in a travel video that we had done. And so it's just like, it makes my heart sing that every day I get to work on travel videos and for a travel company. So I love my job at Princess. And I think that it's okay to be a filmmaker and to be a creator and then to also, work on corporate work to be able to, for me, it's like, I literally do that so that I can fund my indie side projects,
Yeah.
So they kind of go hand in hand. So.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And, Princess is a very large organization, Sean, but the number one lesson that I've learned directing for this organization is the world is a pretty small place, right? Like we're all infinitely more connected than we think we are. And when I travel with Princess and for work, I'm truly getting closer to my soul every day, right? And I think finding our souls is not something we commonly talk about when working for a large organization. But my filmmaking journey will kind of forever be in service of that, being a journey to my soul and to other creative souls, because the more I'm around those folks, the more my journey is inspired to move forward as well. So I think, the large organization, you're in service to that organization, but what is that organization trying to serve? Well, we're trying to, from a Princess standpoint, we're trying to create meaningful experiences and have meaningful connections, right? And that's something that I want to do every day in my life.
So I would love to jump into V4 a little bit and see how that came to play in your project. So what was your relationship like with Frame.io before getting started with V4 specifically?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that one, Kristen. I like to say that we're Frame.io OGs, Sean, right? We've been around for a long time, even before the Adobe acquisition. And we really made some big bets in Frame.io in the early versions, hoping that V4 would become what it is today, right? And I think the previous versions for us, Sean, is really kind of the setup for our roadmap for remote collaboration. We've really been trying to figure that out for a long time. And I think V4 is really where we're going to start our journey to world-class collaboration, because now I feel like I have a software that's working at the speed of my imagination.
Kristen, I know you mentioned you worked with it a little bit before.
Yeah, no, I it's interesting because it's like I have before Frame and then I have Frame V3 and then I have Frame V4. And the biggest thing for me in V3 and like starting to use that was that, like we've been talking about, is we have a lot, like communication is key. Communicating in V3 was great. but we still used Microsoft Teams and email and things like that. Let's say we had to like attach a drone shot. What are you thinking, Scott? I want this shot. Here's what it looks like. Or, like I want the VFX to go here. But now in V4, you can like circle things, attach things. And so I feel like when we were using V3, we used other like ways of communicating a lot more. But now that we have V4 and now that we can react and attach and do more within the communication within Frame itself, I feel like that's actually been a huge help. So I feel like we communicate on other platforms less and in Frame more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that too, right? Because I like to call Frame.io my post-production headset, right? When I'm chatting with my DP on set, even if we're right next to each other, physically next to each other, we still have a headset on. So if I walk 5 feet away from Joe Simon, our DP, I'm still in constant communication with him. And that level of collaboration is the type of collaboration that I like to have, right? Because I believe that great creativity is great iteration. And that is another thing that we're seeing in Frame is the speed of that iteration, right? Is continuing to fuel more creative momentum. So I think what we're seeing here is just, it's about how you collaborate with people, right? And how that speed can impact your own momentum, right? I think in creativity, one thing we always have to remind ourselves is that inspiration is a spark, but momentum is fire, right? And I think that's another thing that Frame creates inside of our organization is tremendous creative momentum, because we are making so much every day that our creative tool and our creative axe is constantly being sharpened.
Yeah. So with working with Princess, what's that creative collaboration like? And do you communicate with Princess through Frame.io as well? Like, are they receptive of this tool?
Yeah. We send links out.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that actually Kristen and I were talking about this before the call, and I think it's one thing that's beautiful about Frame.io, right? Is in a large organization, you can have a lot of stakeholders and a lot of clients and a lot of opinions, right? And that's okay, because every opinion needs to be heard, but that doesn't mean that every note needs to be executed, right? So again, if we're centralizing our creative teams, we're also centralizing our stakeholders inside Frame.io. So if there is some conflicting notes, instead of that being moved to email or to Teams or to WhatsApp or to text, and really taking away the time spent on what we're trying to do, it centralizes those comments. So if two stakeholders do have conflicting opinions, they can actually work that out in the comments instead of Kristen or myself even looking at those comments. So I think that's another thing, is it becomes this true watering hole for not only the creative side of the business, but the client side of the business as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So before I jump into my next question, I do want to let everyone know in the chat that yes, this session will be recorded, and we do have your questions getting queued up. So keep them coming through. We're going to start Q&A here shortly, but we've got about 7 lined up right now. So I want to get through these questions with them and then jump over to that, because we're getting close on time, folks, but keep them coming. We love the questions. Again, jumping back over to V4, what do you think fundamentally changed with your workflow once you got your hands on V4? Like, what really started getting the wheels turning?
Do you want me to go on first in this one?
Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
Okay. So communication, I know we keep saying that, but that's been like my number one thing with this. Metadata has been huge. I use metadata in all of my Premiere products. So Scott shoots multiple frame rates. He shoots anything from 23.98 all the way up to like 240. And so being able to sort things by frame rate or who uploaded it, camera, like all these different things, there's 32 different metadata fields. That's been very, very helpful. And then the collections has also been really great, because when we have quick turnaround videos and also with working for a travel brand where we literally go 7 continents all over the world, being able to create collections for different projects and being able to easily access footage has been huge. And then one other thing has been the ability to draw on and pin things on screen. So we have some VFX, or little things that we have to do here and there, titles, like whatever it is, like remove a little sign or whatever. But we have an amazing VFX artist. His name is Charles. Hi, Charles, if you're ever watching this.
Hi, Charles.
He's great. But we actually communicate not just between Scott and I and the producers and the clients, but we also have our VFX artist on there as well. And so we can actually pin and tag things on screen, and then he can go in, do that, upload it, and I can grab it. So it's very like seamless. In V4 versus V3, we couldn't do that. So
yeah, I like to say that, and everything that Kristen said, I 100% believe in. It's like V4 kind of gives our teams wings, Sean, right? Mm-hmm. Because on the creative side, I think what you'll feel is you're just going to have more time to focus on creativity versus the tech, right? So that's going to lead you to more high impact creative hours, right? So pre-Frame.io V4, I was spending, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. with my UK team, right? Then midday, I would go into my North American team, and then I'd finish my day with the Australian teams, right? And that's all changed, right? Because now I'm able to centralize all my communication and be respectful and know that it's all in Frame, and they're going to see it when they wake up, right? And then I think the stakeholders, they're going to feel a lot, right? They're going to see that content velo. They're going to see quality standards be maintained, even if their scope is increasing. And then also team morale too. That was another thing that we've seen is just our post-production teams morale has increased. And even Kristen had said coming out of the Alaska project, this is the first time in 20 years that I truly felt part of the team. And it's like, that almost is heartbreaking when you think about that. Kristen being such an amazing collaborator, an amazing talent in this industry, and has cut so many of the commercials that we see on television. This is her first time feeling like she's part of a team. That is what gets me so excited about Frame, is it's truly a software that's enabling collaboration, which is fantastic.
So what other tools besides Frame are you guys using? I know in the case study video, you guys are cutting on Premiere, but you know, what's the experience of using Adobe tools on making all of this content?
Oh gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah,
I mean,
Kristen,
I use so much Adobe. I use Premiere, After Effects, Lightroom, Photoshop. I used to use Audition a lot more. You guys have some good cleanup tools now with AI that you introduced into Premiere. But yeah, like the workflow between them has been very seamless. I love how with Frame you can download comments and whatever, you know, metadata, different things like that from Frame into Premiere. But then from Premiere, you can also you can right click a clip and bring it into After Effects, right click audio, bring it into Audition, import Photoshop files, have all your, you know, it's just like the whole way that it works is amazing. And then you can export it and put it back into Frame. So it's like it's very seamless. And it makes my life much, much easier. And I don't know of any other platforms that work that way. I mean, I used to work in all different editing platforms, and it's definitely the cleanest one, and I love it. So
yeah,
I love it. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just one ecosystem versus, you know, competing platforms, and then you're spending all your time on the tech instead of the creativity.
Yeah.
So I do want to wrap up for the last question or so here, but you know, what for people that are experiencing FrameIO for the first time, we may have a lot of people that are listening that they've never used Frame. What would you advise them to do first as a best practice?
Yeah, I actually took some notes on this one because this is close to my heart. So I think, you know, standardizing organizational practices is number one, Sean. And what does that mean, right? It's documenting your workflow, eliminating those multiple channels, whether it's Teams or WhatsApps, right? It's making sure that you have a bulletproof file folder metadata structure. And then also creating DRIs for your workflow, right? DRIs are direct responsible individuals. And I think in our organization, that's something that we focus on a lot, is as our organization grows, we know that we need folks that are inside FrameIO every day. So we actually have in our organization a direct responsible individual for FrameIO. And that person is not me, right? Because I don't spend enough time in the platform that I would like to. But the folks that do have the time and the bandwidth to spend time in FrameIO, they're directly responsible individual for almost everything that happens in Frame. And a lot of times those folks are teaching me a lot about the platform too. So those are a couple of things that I would do before I get in there, is just get yourself organized, you know?
One thing I want to add to that too, is I love everything that you just said. I think that's huge. Also, I feel like when you're looking at what we're doing, so yeah, Princess is a huge brand. We have bigger budgets, but I also I have my personal Frame and then I have my Princess Frame. And I think that Frame and Adobe products in general are just such a huge asset for indie creators. So I'm also an independent filmmaker. And it's monumental in my workflow. I mean, I will even just on my own personal projects, I can export myself a documentary, upload it to Frame, and I can go on an airplane when I can't bring my huge hard drive, and I can be leaving myself comments and bring them back into Frame. So it's a tool that you don't have to have a big budget to work on projects. It's really great for all creators with even no budget. Most of the things I do have no budget. So
yeah, that's a great point, because even Kristen's documentary, she'll send me that and I'll be looking at that on the weekend, and I'm living in Frame on the weekend with her, so it's truly something that it's a paintbrush that we use all the time, right? And that's the way I look at it. It's just this brilliant tool that we can pull out that's going to enhance our creativity, and I think in the time and space that we're in today, most of us are being asked to do more with less. You need a software that helps you be more efficient. And FrameIO has truly been that software for us.
Yeah.
Well, I love hearing that. And I also, we're almost at time, but I want to get time in for Q&A, but that was a great way to kind of to end that. So I would love to actually start our Q&A section.
Great.
All right, so we're officially in Q&A now. It only can go by the transitions. Once we do the transition, then we're in that section. I'm gonna try and power these through, but we got quite a bit of questions in here, and I love it. So the first one is going to be from Victor. Thank you, Victor. What an amazing turnaround time! How long did it take to upload the high resolution files from the cameras, and how big was the average file size?
That's a great question. Kristen, do you want to take that, or do you want me to jump on the limited
can jump on
knowledge
that.
I have? Yeah,
Oh,
I think
okay.
maybe you know better here, Kristen. So maybe you take this one.
Well, so with regards, are you talking about uploading like the high resolution camera files to Frame? I'm just trying to clarify.
Well, maybe
Like
a good
camera to
look,
cloud, or what's the?
maybe a look at kind of the workflow, because I know that in the Alaskan landscape, data can be a little up and down. So
Yeah.
how did you guys kind of work with your workflow? How did you work with your high res media? Was it all uploaded? Were you just uploading maybe your edits? Maybe talking on that.
I can take that, because I think going to Alaska, one of the big questions we wanted to answer was, could we run a camera to cloud workflow for the entire production, which in this situation we could not, right? But we still used camera to cloud when it was effective for us, right? So as far as how long did the files take, it really depends on how that file was captured, right? Because a lot of our files were B-roll clips that might only been 15 seconds, but then we also had A-roll clips that were 30 minutes long, right? So for us, it was truly just bandwidth, right? Is in Alaska, we were working with Starlink. So whatever Starlink could give us, right, whether it was 15 megabits upload, that's what we would get, right? So I think to answer your question, Victor, which I think is a great question, right, is it's truly what is your bandwidth in that location? And that's how you're going to kind of engineer how long it will take to upload those files, because depending on where we were in Alaska, sometimes it was very fast, sometimes it was very slow. Just depends on the bandwidth. And I think average file size, Kristen, everything was ProRes 444. Do you have an average file size? That's a good question that I don't think I have a great answer for.
I mean, they varied. I knew from a gig to several hundred gigs. It just depends on how long.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd be shooting 240 frames per second,
Yeah.
Open
And
gate
Victor,
on
we
a
shot, and
175.
here's another thing that might help you, Victor, is we shot 15 terabytes over 14 days, right? So we were averaging about a terabyte per day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Victor, thank you for that question. Hopefully that answered the questions you were looking for. Let me jump to the next one here. This is actually a good one. This one's from Corey. And Corey's asking, I'm used to only using Frame for approvals on edits. What's the benefit of being able to upload dailies and choose selects versus just allowing the editor to make those decisions? Pros and cons.
Take it, Kristen.
So that was actually something that really helped me. Going back to Victor's question a little bit, is like turning around something that fast. I know you were talking about file uploads, but we actually did get a call or an email about turn around a select sequence. We basically delivered a select sequence of the entire shoot. They wrapped filming on a Friday, and we had it to them with less than 24 hours later, like a full select sequence, color corrected, ready to go to the president of the company. But anyways, the way that I was able to do that was by having so we also had a DIT, of course. We had some tech people, shout out to David, that were there, but he was uploading proxy files. And then Scott was able to comment on those, and then I was able to download those. So I was able, while Scott was out shooting the next day, I would be going through his comments and his selects in Frame.io. So if you're shooting in that way, that like in terms of like still on production and trying to turn around a product quickly, it's extremely helpful. Now, if you wrap a project and you have an editor and you're like, why should I use Frame.io? You can also, instead of having to meet up with your editor and sit by them and say, I like this, or giving them notes, you can literally send them footage and mark your favorite shots, mark your favorite angles. Hey, don't use this take. There's a light on in the background. The continuity is wrong. Like there could be so many different things that could be off in shots, but you as the director who was on set that had that knowledge that maybe the editor doesn't, you could actually mark those things in Frame so that they don't even have to look through that footage. Or there was like one sequence where somebody, I think it was like one of our drone pilots, he was like, oh, you don't have to go through that footage because we got better stuff the next day, and it's like, so I was able to go into frame and be like, don't use this, or, it's
Yep.
just, it's very helpful. So
Yeah. There's so many hours that Kristen could have wasted looking at footage that she didn't need to use, right? And we're on a 14-day shoot. She shows up on day 7. We're going to deliver something 7 days later. Not only is she trying to consume the previous 7 days, she's also trying to consume what we're shooting that day, right? So if my ability to communicate with her and be like, don't watch those 3 hours is critical, right? If you have months to put this stuff together, no big deal. But if you're talking like you're going to deliver something quickly, those minutes and seconds become critical to your collaboration velocity.
I love it. Thank you for that question, Corey. Jamming right along here. This one's actually a really good one, and I think this is really useful for a lot of folks in the audience. What is your best recommendation for onboarding new team members to Frame.io?
I'll take that. I think it's show, don't tell, right? I truly don't want to sell anything to anyone that they don't want, right? And I truly believe filmmakers need Frame.io in their lives, right? So instead of me going to my collaborators and saying, this is so beautiful, I truly just start working with them in Frame.io. And because it's so strong, what they realize is it starts saving them time. And if we can show somebody a tool that makes their lives easier, we don't need to get them excited, right? It's self-inflicted excitement, Nobody needs to tell me to get excited about Frame.io because Frame.io is increasing my time throughout the day. So I think that is kind of the best recommendation, is just put it in their hands, right? Let them use it as quickly as possible.
And screen share too is something that I do. I teach a lot of, in the past, I've taught a lot of people how to edit even in like Premiere. And sharing my screen and going through my favorite features, or, what I mean? Like showing them how something works, doesn't. Here's how you can cut time and save time is very helpful.
Yeah.
So,
All right. We've got 2 more questions left. If there's any new ones that come in, I don't know if we're going to have time to get it, but let's see if we can do it real fast. This one is, it might sound silly, and it's not silly. It's a great question. What's your favorite feature on Frame?
Take it, Kristen.
That's a great question. I have too many. Oh gosh.
Me too. I have 2.
On the spot. I think. Go ahead.
I'll go if you don't have your answer ready, Kristen. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. I'll go.
Yeah, mine's definitely metadata, right? Like customizable metadata is what is driving all of this, right? And then to put even cherry on top of that, it's collections. Those are the 2 features that really we kind of banked on Frame.io having this in the future. Even when we were in V2, we're like, hey, metadata is going to come. So we're going to continue to commit to this software. So when it does go to the version that we want, we're ready for it, right? Because for me, the jump from V3 to V4 was more like a jump from V3 to V9, right? And that's what got us really excited about it, with the metadata and the collection. So those are the 2 things that I think I'm really loving right now.
I think those 2 are huge. And then also going back to communication and the way that not just like, how you make a comment, but also how the comments, I can bring them into Premiere so that when I bring in a clip, I can see all my markers. That is like hugely helpful as an editor, because it's almost like you're logging your footage, especially if you're doing documentary style or something that you don't have like script notes for. You can literally just bring it in and be like, okay, select, and then it's right there. So
yeah. And if you're doing hundreds of videos, right? Like Kristen and I are doing video production at scale, right? We're making broadcast commercials, but we're also making hundreds of videos, right? And to be able to do that, you really need to track the work. Who's delivering it? When's it going to be delivered? And in V3, as much as I loved V3, it did not map the way that we think about the post-production process, where V4 truly does. And you can tag people, and that truly gives you more speed, again, because you don't have to do things manual. Things are tagged. And again, like Kristen was talking earlier, like she's out in Michigan today, our photo retouchers in the UK, like I might not talk to them today at all in person, but there's going to be tons of communication happening in Frame.io.
Well, I really appreciate both of you jumping on. Unfortunately, we are at the end of our scheduled time, but I want to thank you both so much for joining in. I want to thank our audience for joining in. Yes, thank you 2 for jumping on.
Thank you
to
so
our
much for
session
having
today.
us.
Please stay on the call, though. We're going to talk a little bit afterwards. Now, folks, for those of you that registered, make sure you check your emails because we are offering a 30-day trial code for Frame.io for joining this session today. But to learn more about Frame.io, head to the Frame.io live page, frame.io/live, and sign up for ongoing sessions. We have one tomorrow that's going to go over V4. So check back often as we do update our schedule. Please also follow us on Instagram, frame_io, and our blog.frame.io. Thank you again for joining us and have a great day. This is Frame.io Live, everyone. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.